Welcome back, everyone. This is Tucker. Let's talk weather. We're coming out of a quiet week, but our pattern is breaking down, and it's about to get much more active. This includes a heightened chance for severe weather later this week and multiple days beyond. Hey, everyone. Hope you're having a nice start to the week. We are coming out of a quieter week of weather, and I really hope you guys had a chance to enjoy it because we're changing things up pretty fast. Now, I will say not everyone enjoyed the quiet and mild weather like most of the country did. Here's a picture from my neck of the woods out here in the Northeast. Yeah, it snowed actually as much as 9 inches in portions of interior Massachusetts this past weekend, and I believe this picture sums up April snow better than anything else. But like I said, our pattern is quickly changing now. You're going to see some big temperature swings and multiple chances for severe weather. Let's jump into those threats, and by the way, if you have any questions along the way, just drop them in the comments. We're going to start you off here on Monday, this is today actually, with a severe weather threat that is emerging across portions of the mid-Atlantic. And you can see that impacts places like Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, and Virginia. We'll get into this in more detail in just a moment, but I'm looking at what will be a damaging wind, large hail, even a tornado threat for this part of the country as we start the week off. But I will mention also, this is sort of a one and done thing. So I don't expect this to evolve into anything much bigger. As we get into the later days of this week, though, now we're taking a look at Thursday. And this isn't a big area here, but I have reason to believe that this outlook from the Storm Prediction Center is going to be stretched out. It's going to be broadened. More people than just this spot will be impacted by severe weather. And I'll explain why I'm thinking that in just a moment here, too. But I want to let you know that's what we're looking at on Thursday. And then on Friday, this is where I believe we're going to see a more widespread impact of severe weather. And you can see the Storm Prediction Center is in agreement here, as this threat may take us from southern Michigan all the way into Texas. And once more, we do not have a threat beyond Friday, but I do believe there is reason to be watching for severe weather in this part of the country once again. You can see that's portions of the East Coast and the Mid-South. And I'll get into details explaining why that is. And we're also going to talk about here how this is going to impact some pretty big changes in the weather, even if you're not being hit by the severe storms. So we're going to start with the jet stream here. And this is what controls so much of our weather. It helps to fuel severe storms, and it also helps to direct where that warm and cold air and all that stuff goes. And what you're seeing right now is this dip in the jet stream. You got some stronger winds coming across the north central U.S., and that's actually part of the reason we're going to have severe storms at all today in the mid-Atlantic area. And you can see we have this little burst of wind sort of opening up right there. That's the reason that storms are going to be possibly severe. But like I said, it's a one and done thing. Our jet begins to dive farther south heading into the middle of the week here on Wednesday. And really what we're getting a look at here is what will be quiet weather out west with that ridge, and then a little bit of cooler weather and perhaps some rain out east, at least briefly, because the jet stream takes a dip out there. But it does look pretty good out in the west, at least until this guy comes into play right here. You can see this low pressure system and the associated jet streak with it right there. And what this is it's the subtropical branch of the jet, which basically means it's going to bring more wind, and it's also going to help to lift some humidity and warmth into the region too. So here's our jet now as we head into Thursday. Notice it's intersecting those areas where I'm watching the potential for severe weather. In fact, with these dynamics, we would have the potential for severe weather across a pretty broad area. It's just a matter of where does the instability align. And we're going to get into that in a moment here, but I want to show you the wind will not be a problem on Thursday. Friday either. We know there's going to be a more widespread severe weather threat on Friday, and you can see these stronger winds really spreading out across a good chunk of this portion of the region. So certainly no questions there about potential severe weather. And finally, heading into Saturday, we still have decent jet dynamics here. I don't expect we're going to have enough instability in the Northeast, but this does lead me to believe we do have enough energy for some storms on the East Coast, as I mentioned before. And I'm just going to push this into next week too, by the way, because what I want to talk about is the potential for some more storms as another disturbance comes into play here. I'm going to look for this to perhaps strengthen. We won't worry about it too much right now, but I do want to mention that there is storm chances even beyond this. Now, as for instability, you can see out in the mid-Atlantic, we have enough out there. We have the potential for some severe storms because we have the wind and the instability. And then if we push this all the way into our Thursday, you're going to see that we have instability begin to emerge again. This is actually Wednesday, and there's Thursday, across a good chunk of the central U.S. And this is basically just telling us the chances that there will be enough to make severe storms. With the jet and with this level of instability, we certainly have the potential for severe weather from Iowa as far south as Oklahoma and Texas. The question will be a cap And a cap, it basically it prevents storms from even reaching, utilizing this instability, that wind energy. And that's why I don't believe we have a threat level posted from the Storm Prediction Center on the south side. But the potential is there, and it's something that you should at least be aware of, even if you're not hearing it about it much elsewhere yet. As far as Friday goes, we have that severe weather threat. You can see pretty clearly. We have the jet. We have the instability extending from Michigan down to Texas. Doesn't look like a high-end severe weather threat to me personally, but there's enough there easily for severe storms. And then heading into your Saturday, not a ton of instability, but you know what? I believe we have enough, or will have enough here on the East Coast, at least in a small area. And that's why I believe Saturday we'll be looking at storms in that part of the country too. I'll also just give you an idea of next week. Again, we're looking a ways out here, but you can see heading into Tuesday and Wednesday, these would be the 23rd and 24th. There is a lot of instability that a lot of the country will have to work with. That's a more May-like look, and certainly with any burst of energy in the middle of the country, we'll be able to make storms too. Wanted to mention, guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so. I'm always going to give you the forecast as I see it, and I'll keep you one step ahead of the storms and everyone else out there. Now to our severe weather threat today, and what I'm looking at is the potential for a cluster of storms, but really it's one or two storms that may be dominant that produce the severe weather. You can see here there'd be a couple on the southern edge here that look stronger than the rest. So while most of you may not experience severe weather, there may be one or two storms that is pretty strong, and that would be the potential for our tornadoes, our wind, our hail. Just wanted to note that. And we are looking at a threat that'll take us through the late afternoon and through the early evening before things begin to weaken once again. As for the rest of the U.S., here's our forecast as we head through the middle of the week. And actually what you're seeing is pretty quiet weather through, Monday, Tuesday, even Wednesday looks pretty quiet. Could be some showers out in the northeast out here, but most of the country is going to be kept dry by that high pressure system and that ridge we were talking about. So it's not a bad middle of the week. It's as we get closer to Thursday, you can see this guy here begins to come into play. That's going to be our storm system that helps to initiate the storms and potential severe weather as soon as Thursday. And what we're looking at is actually a lot of wind, by the way, too. So even if you're not seeing severe weather, we got a lot of colder air coming down across the we'll call it Rocky Mountains. Could be some snow out there, in fact. And we have a lot of wind as we pull warm air and moisture out of the Gulf and out of the desert Southwest. So that's coming into play here too. And you can see as soon as we get into Thursday, we'll call it late afternoon, we have the potential for some storms to pop up out here. Looks like a more second half of the day though. Wouldn't surprise me if this holds off until the evening. I'll also mention that we have the instability. Remember, we have all the ingredients. We're not seeing a lot of storms pop up down here, but it is something I want to watch because that is an area where we could see a storm or two emerge. We just have to wait and see because there is that cap in place. So I wouldn't get complacent, but we'll be watching. Then as we head into Friday, you can see, especially later on Friday, we have numerous storms begin to pop up here, and that's our storm threat from Texas to Michigan. This does look like a late in the day through the evening and potentially even the night type of a threat. And so this will not be one that begins in the morning. You'll have to wait till later on. And again, you'll want to have something that can wake you up in case there is a severe storm because they could come at night. And then heading into your Saturday, as I've been watching, I do believe there may be some severe storms here in many of the areas that are actually being impacted today by severe weather. So something to note right there. Beyond that, thought I'd give you a look here at Easter Sunday. And while those storms do exit the east, there is some suggestion that we may have a couple storm systems or at least downpours across the central U.S. So I'd keep an eye out there if you had those egg hunts. Looks a bit rainy. But the East Coast, the West Coast, the Rocky Mountains, everyone else looks pretty good. Also looks pretty mild across the U.S. too. So Easter plans should be all right. But if you live from Iowa through Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, may make some notes on the potential for rain and downpours on the day. Another byproduct of some of the more active weather are some pretty wacky temperature swings over the next week here. It's been mild across a lot of the country, but we're actually getting colder air to come in as we head towards the middle of the week, briefly at least. It'll be briefly warm out east too, and it will be warm out west as we go through the beginning and middle of the week, and that's going to stick around for at least a little bit of time. That's the only place it may be consistent. You can see that cold air reaches the East Coast heading into Wednesday, Thursday. That mild air returns to the Midwest Thursday into Friday as our storm system becomes more significant, and that will eventually reach the East Coast too. So looking like a very warm weekend out east. Meanwhile, cold air comes right back in as we head into the weekend in the middle of the United States, replaces that warmth, and our pattern continues to be more active. But what I will say is that finally, after this week, there is some suggestion that we find a more stable pattern with colder weather out west and warmer weather out east. And this looks to be the pattern as we head through most of late April here. So that's when we finally settle into something. But through this week, expect a lot of big temperature changes. All right, guys, so we're going to wrap it up there. Make sure to ask any questions you got in the comments. Let me know what kind of weather you're experiencing. I love to talk weather. I love to hear what you're seeing. Send me your pictures if you got anything cool. And be sure to check back as we track these severe storms. And I'll have updates for you. So I'll see you back here next time.